Welcome, everyone, to the Ultimate Coach Live book reading. We are live, and I'd love to pass it over to my fellow co host, Miss Martha Jeffers.
Uh,
Everyone, yay!
mm,
So good to be with you this evening on Wednesday, November 8th. My goodness, for us, the holidays are just around the corner, and it lights my heart and it opens it up to receive and give back gratitude. And so tonight, I'd like you to just for one moment, and if you want to, you can even close your eyelids and just think about someone or something for which you are in gratitude for, or you're grateful for. There's so many things that come up for me. And so I invite you to just sit for just a moment and reflect back on what it is or what person you might be in gratitude for. Fabulous. Here in the US, we'll begin Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks. And so many of us are in preparation for that. And so I begin my November with each day just really focusing on what am I grateful for today? And so thank you for joining me this evening. Awesome. We're all here, and we're here today to read chapter 16, Demolition, of the wonderful, beautiful book, The Ultimate Coach, written by the most incredible human that I know, Amy Hardison, and with Alan D. Thompson, who did all the research for us to be sitting here in gratitude for their words that were placed on paper for us to read often. This is my third book reading, and I know that there's many of you out there who are reading it maybe for the 14th time. So I welcome you tonight to read chapter 16. Thank you so much, Nicholas T. Smith, for joining us tonight and reading this chapter. Thank you for having said yes. I appreciate you and can't wait to hear your lovely voice as you read these words of this chapter. Thank you, Nicholas. Let's see. So why do we come together every Wednesday night and Saturday and Sunday mornings? Why do we do that? But to read this magnificent book that's changing the lives of so many across the world. It certainly made a huge difference in my life when I first got a hold of this book about 2.5 years ago. And my life has not been the same. And I know that many of you have been affected by it as well. And so we come together to gather, to listen, to share, so that we can then in that sharing even grow deeper into the awareness of who are we being and who are we being today. Just know that your presence is valuable, that we appreciate you being here. And when we get to share and you share about you, we also take in whatever it is that's reflecting back to us. So what a joy to have you here expanding, growing, and being in community today. There is one thing that I'd like to bring to our attention, and that is if at any time you have the calling or you really feel that tenderness inside to acknowledge someone, we would really appreciate it if you could privately DM them or even put it on the chat, because this reading that we're having today and we have on Sunday is really about you. When we listen to the words that are shared and the words that Nicholas is going to share with us in the reading, it's all about you. And so when you listen about you. When you share about you. And when you are present, be present with you in this beautiful container that we're holding as a placeholder for us to grow. So listen about you, read about you, and share about you. Let's see, is there anything else that I need to share? I think that's about it. So all you beautiful people, here we are. I'll pass this on to Fari, who will take us to the next level of our reading. Here we go. Go, Fari.
Well, look at me. I'm so excited. I am so excited you guys are here. That's fabulous. And oh my God, the delightful, amazing Nick Smith. I love you, man. I had the pleasure of being a guest in your show last May, and I fell in love with you. And I thought you are just such a light. And it's such a joy to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Oh my goodness, the more we learn about you, or at least the more I learn about you, the more I want to love God and I want to be like you when I grow up.
Love it. Thank you.
So thank you, my darling. Thank you for, of course, forever, Amy Hardison, for bringing us here with this incredible book. So I am getting my book out, and I'd love to see how many of you have your book. Can I see it, please? It's only $20, and it's giving us $20 million value of life, isn't it? Excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you. So yes, the book that is just done, like I don't have no idea how many times I've read it. God only knows, between this and the Kindle and the Audible, listening to it. But every single time they read it here in the book reading, I just feel like this is literally the first time I'm hearing it, and it's just phenomenal. All of us coming together, enjoy this beautiful moment here together. And where are you guys? I am in Indio, California. It's a little town next to Palm Desert. If you blink, you're gonna pass it. That's where I am. So where are you? Let's write it in the chat and see where you are. Wisconsin, Salt Lake City, Vancouver, wow, Idaho, Southeast, oh wow, yeah, Los Angeles, brilliant. Serbia, wow, Washington, D.C. Kawa Lake, where is that? Oh, Thailand, yes, of course. Florida, Brooklyn, Colorado, India. Can you imagine? Gilbert, Arizona. One book has gotten us all together in this brilliant space to be together. And joy and the knowledge of the book is just so immense that no words can express how much we're growing exponentially, all of us, in different ways. I don't recognize me from 2 years ago. I don't recognize me from 6 months ago, but just because of this book. And I love the fact that we constantly emphasize on that you are here for you. So please, let's acknowledge that we are just wanting to share about you. And if you have to share about somebody else, I will have to come and stop you. So please don't do that. And I wanted to know, who's a first timer here that can read the beginning and the back of the book? Do we have a first timer here that I don't know of? No, I don't see. Does any of the team see anyone? I don't. Does anybody care to read the first 2 pages and the last page? I know. Yeah, Dave, you want to read it? Oh, good. Do you want to read the back of the book, love? Perfect. Jeremy, do you want to read the first 2 pages?
Sure.
I miss you. I haven't seen you for so long, so I got excited to see you. I thought I've got to treat you like special. So, okay, that'd be lovely. And then, so Dave, my love, you please read the back of the book, and right after you, Jeremy, if you would please go to the first 2 pages before you begin. And right after that, Nick, you don't have to stop, just go ahead. And if you would start reading the chapter 16, Demolition, that'd be lovely. Okay. Perfect. All right, let's bring it on, Dave Orton.
Dear potential reader, as you may have noticed, there are no testimonials on the back cover of this book imploring you to read it. I vetoed that. The only testimonial I am interested in is the one you will have from reading and experiencing this book. Please do not read this book about me. Read this book about you. Read it about being. As you read, ask yourself, who would I need to be a more loving person? Who would I need to be a more effective parent? Who would I need to be to create a level of confidence that is remarkable? Who would I need to be at peace with who I am? Who would I need to be fully in love with myself and my life? Who would I need to be to live the most extraordinary life I can live? I promise you that if you read this book with the intention of expanding your state of being, you will do exactly that. Your experience will be remarkable. Who you are being is everything. Loving you, be blessed, be you. Steve.
Before you begin, Steve Hardison. I never wanted to write a book, and I haven't. I never wanted to have a book written about me, but here it is. This book is a gift from my wife, Amy, who wrote it, and my friend, Alan D. Thompson, who conducted the research and interviews on which it is based. And it's not just a gift to me, but a gift to you, too. And now you're reading it. So with your permission, I'll give you some suggestions on how to read it. You see, it's not an ordinary book. It's not simply a biography. It's not a self-help book. It's not a literary classic. It's definitely not a book about how to coach. In fact, it's not a book about doing anything. It's a book about being, and it's a book about you. To access this book, ask yourself these questions as you read it. Who am I being as a partner, a parent, or a friend? Who am I being as a leader? Who am I being as a member of my community? Who would I need to be to have miracles show up in my daily life? Who would I need to be to create value in the work that I do? Who would I need to be to generate a life of abundance? Who would I need to be to alter my relationship with fear? Who would I need to be at peace with my past? Who would I need to be to step powerfully into my future? Who would I need to be present as a way of being? Who would I need to be to live the most extraordinary life I could live? Who would I need to be to know that my life makes a difference? Who would I need to be fully in love with myself and my life? Who would I need to be to improve my relationships with the most important people in my life? And who would I need to be to read The Ultimate Coach and have a personal breakthrough in being wonderful me? The best part about this book about you, is that it's endless. The story goes on, and it's written by your being. Loving you, be blessed, be you, Steve Hardison.
Chapter 16, Demolition. He's good. Amazing, actually. He could help us, Steve thought. Steve was sitting in a Landmark Forum seminar. At the front of the room. Leading the seminar stood Lloyd Fickett. Lloyd was impressive. He was distinguished in appearance, articulate, and masterful in leading the seminar participants from breakdowns to breakthroughs. He had a keen understanding of Werner Erhard's work, something no doubt honed when he had worked for Werner in San Francisco. Lloyd's job had been to make sure all the telephone cords were consistently straight and untangled on every phone in the 7-story building. In a world of cell phones, sans cords, the difficulty of this task might be undervalued. Before 1990, the possibility for a tangled cord existed every time the phone was hung up. Lloyd could not run around the building straightening every cord after every call. He had to enroll every person into the commitment to untangled cords. He had to get people to see that impeccably existed in the smallest of actions. This was rigorous training in getting everyone in a company in alignment. It was perfect training for what Rodell needed. At first, Don Budinger was hesitant to hire Lloyd as an executive coach. He wasn't sure they needed an outsider to come in and help them. Plus, Lloyd was expensive. Steve was insistent that hiring Lloyd, who could see with clarity because he was from the outside, was exactly what Rodell needed. Eventually, Don hired Lloyd to work with the executive team. Together, Lloyd and the team created the Rodell principles, which Lloyd later developed into his collaborative way. They were: listen generously to each other, speak straight to each other, be for each other, honor our commitments, be a source of acknowledgement and appreciation. Rodell was already doing these things to some degree, but the organization wasn't quite we, explains Lloyd. These Rodell principles or commitments established a context for how they would work together and support each other. Lloyd's work with Rodell was exceptional. After the company's culture was in place, Lloyd took groups of key employees into the wilderness where they jumped off cliffs, ran through a ropes course, and participated in activities that pushed them physically and emotionally. But that came later. First, Lloyd was about to rock Steve's world. Early in July 1991, Lloyd entered Steve's office at Rodell and closed the door. He held his tightly clenched fists in front of his chest and said, "Steve, what's this about?" "What are you talking about?" asked Steve. Lloyd raised his eyebrows. It was so obvious. Lloyd came at it from another direction. "You're constantly on edge and stressed. What's behind that?" Steve had no answer. Lloyd continued, "Almost all of us are born belonging. At some point, an event occurs, and we, all of us, find we are alone. We're not prepared for that moment. It's disconcerting. We respond based on patterns that are already in place. Over time, these patterns solidify and form our fundamental approach to life. They usually have a very strong emotional anchor." Lloyd had a process to heal this break in belonging. It consisted of 2 sessions. In the first, Lloyd helped his clients remember the early events in their lives, the decisions they made about those events, and the patterns that emerged. Lloyd usually held the second session a week later. This session included breathing exercises, exploring what the client had learned during the week, and further processing of the early experiences. Everyone Lloyd had taken through this process found it to be a fundamental turning point in their lives, including Lloyd himself. He asked Steve if he was interested in doing it. Steve was all in. Steve arrived for his first session the next Friday evening. Lloyd and a gentleman named Ron sat in Lloyd's home office. They both had yellow legal pads. Steve took a seat in the middle of the room. "When were you born? How many siblings do you have? What do you remember about?" Lloyd's voice was calm. His questions were constant, like an escalator. For 3 hours, Lloyd queried, Steve responded, and Ron and Lloyd captured Steve's answers on legal pads. Lloyd flipped to the first page of the legal pad and began to read Steve's answers back to him. Any of the following could have been written down. "Your uncle constantly berated you and told you that you would never amount to anything. You were jumped by a group of teenagers and beaten up, egged on by a family member. There was the young adult man who preyed on younger boys, and so on. There were some darker things." Steve felt dazed. He knew about those things. He had lived those things. But when they were all laid out with their jagged edges exposed, with his soul naked, there was no pretending it didn't matter. There was no imagining it was a one-off. So many people had injured him. No one had protected him. No wonder he was angry. The first part of their process was complete. Steve drove a few streets away and parked under a tree. Tears welled up, then surged over their margins. Steve felt like he did when the water ski bashed into his bottom teeth, laying them flat and leaving the nerves exposed to the cold air. His whole body was his teeth. July 17th, 1991, round 2. Steve knocked on the office door. A very pregnant woman greeted him warmly. Lloyd introduced her as Carrie and explained she was there to hold the space of love and to guide Steve in some breathing exercises. The office now had a large mattress on the floor. It was for Steve. Lloyd settled into his office chair. Steve relaxed into the mattress. Lloyd picked up the list of last week's questions and responses. He read the list slowly, pausing to ask how Steve felt and if there was anything he wanted to say. There was so much to say. Steve's emotions began to seethe like magma. Lloyd read Steve's description of his experience of having his ear bitten, gnawed, and twisted by a family member. It had happened over and over until Steve's ear became grotesquely misshaped, like a pixie ear. He had to have surgery to fix it. The pregnant woman gently touched Steve's ear. Steve hurled a defiant scream. The rage spewed. Steve bolted to his feet. "Stay on the mattress," Lloyd called. Steve obeyed, but his energy defied containment. He thrashed, he kicked. His foot connected with Lloyd's file cabinets. The wood splintered. Lloyd relates. The anger that came up was overwhelming. I had never met that much anger. I was looking at how to dispel it. I handed him a couple of legal pads. He ripped them up, but that did nothing to curb his anger. So I handed him a phone book. It was too big to rip up, so he just tossed it. It was pretty clear to me that this wasn't going to stop. The only way to stop it was to enter his energy field and risk what might happen. And so that's what I did. I got down on the floor with him, and fortunately, we were able to connect. He calmed down. Steve remembers curling into the fetal position and Lloyd wrapping his arms around him. Lloyd whispered, "Steve, there's nothing left for you to prove. You're okay. Everything's all right. There's nothing left to prove." Eventually, Steve's breathing slowed. His energy ebbed. He felt purged. Lloyd felt it was safe for the expectant Carrie to be close to Steve. Together, Lloyd and Carrie nurtured Steve. When Steve was grounded, he and Lloyd went to lunch and they continued processing. Food tasted different. They went for a walk in the desert. Everything looked different. Steve felt like he had just experienced a rebirth. Before driving home, Steve reclined in his seat all the way back and took some deep breaths. He reflected on his experience. Instead of basking in the afterglow, his peace started to disintegrate. He picked up the car phone and dialed Amy. He tried to describe what he had gone through. His words crumbled. He began to sob. When he arrived home, Steve again folded into the fetal position. He stared at the wall for the rest of the day and the night and the weekend. On Monday morning, Steve had to go to work. His body went. His heart and soul were splattered. Steve limped along for 6 months. Each day, the thought of getting out of bed and going to work became more and more oppressive. Finally, Steve went to Don and told him that he had to quit. Don offered him 30 days off. Steve took them. For 30 days, he sat and stared and cried. It bought him 90 more days at Rodale, but by then his golden boy image was tarnished. For Steve, that hardly mattered. He had nothing more to give Rodale. He barely had enough to live. Lloyd helped negotiate the departure. He says, "Steve was a powerful part of Rodale. He played a big role in the Rodale merger. He was a tremendous source of inspiration and leadership. He loved so many of the people there, and they loved him. Separating wasn't going to be an easy thing, and there were also economics involved. It was a very challenging process, one of the hardest I've been through personally, in terms of trying to make it work for him and work for the company. The details were handled. The dissolution was achieved. The relationship between Steve and Dawn was smudged, but it would heal with time. What were Steve and Amy going to do with the house they had just moved into? The one they had been building for 2 years? What were they going to do with their lives? The future looked bleak.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Unbelievable. Wow. We all probably think of our own past, isn't it? It takes us to where we've been in the past. All right. Dave Orton, would you like to share? Do you have anything that you get out of it and you like to share?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, this anger, the rage that he felt, and the connection that Lloyd had with Steve was really powerful for me because for me in 2016, I lost my job that I thought I deserved and had unintentionally conflated my identity with. And it was a big job. I was a global program manager for a tech company, traveled all over the world, had huge teams all over the world reporting into me. And then that went away. I was let go. And I couldn't find another job. And I went into 2.5 years of depression. And when I read this chapter, it actually hurt a little bit just because it was so close to home. I actually worked with Steve when I had the opportunity to work with Steve. My sister sponsored my chocolate chip cookie agreement with Steve when I was in the midst of that depression. And I wanted him to just wave a magic wand or something and make it go all away. And he said something to the tune of, "You can count on that. We will not be doing that." And I see Nan smiling there. She's like, "Yep." And Teresa, "That sounds like Steve." I love you guys. The other part I wanted to share was something that had to do with how Lloyd worked with Steve. So when Steve was down, he took a risk and got on the floor with him and wrapped his arms around him. And when he calmed down enough, then Lloyd and Carrie nurtured Steve. They, held him. And I had an experience. It wasn't violent, but it shook me up. And it was with our own Wolfgang Steiner and Renata and a few other people that were with us in Wales. And that experience was utterly healing, utterly nourishing. And it shook me up. I'm still not over the shakeup of it. Like, it shook up the way I thought that things worked. And in a good way, but man, there was a demolition that happened over here with me. And the beauty of this is that what becomes possible for me is new and sacred and powerful from this, and it's uncomfortable. So anyway, I'm not allowed to acknowledge you, but I acknowledge you, Wolfgang and Renata, for your help with that. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jeremy, anything comes up for you? Would you like to share?
Yeah. Yeah, so this chapter, what comes up for me is that, the tremendous change that went through Steve during that time. And I guess for me, I think about, like, you can't give anything out unless you have it. And I know that, this book changed me, being around, this Facebook group changed me. And for that to happen to Steve, it's like he's able to do that with other people, because he's been through it. And so for me, it's like, reading the book, learning about commitment, learning about integrity, these things that really spoke to me, because I was kind of doing them, but I didn't have the words, and I didn't have the vocabulary, and I didn't have all the stuff that it just spoke to me. I was like, this is where it's at, this is what I'm doing. And it gave me, like, focus. And so in order for anyone that I could run into, there could be a miracle, there could be transformation inside of me and inside of the person, because I've been changed, so I could give that out. Is what I think about. And a lot of that has to do with those things that are in this book about being and integrity and being conscious of my thoughts and all kind of stuff. But it shows the work that Steve did, to get to the place that he's at. Yeah, that's what I got, to focus on the inside of me, and to know that, I have to go through it in order to give it out. I have to have it. And that's one of the, not the main reason I work on myself or go through things for others, but it is for others. It's for me to serve. It's for, I work on myself for that too, but it's also for me. So that's what I got.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, this chapter, when I read it at first, I got so angry. And I read the chapter so many more times and I cried every time. And I thought, why did Steve have somebody to crawl with him and just get down and hug him and hold him? And I have been alone all these times and I've had to deal with it. And I was just like kind of jealous, to say the simplest way, that why have I had to be left alone in this for all these years? And there was no one to hug me and hold me and give me that shoulder for me to lean on and cry. And so I got frustrated and I put the book to the side for a bit. But then again, I picked it up and I read it and I went to other chapters. And as I was reading it, it was just by some grace that I have no name for it, but by some grace, it was that acknowledgement that I got from the book that whilst I'm reading the book, this chapter is actually holding me, hugging me, and embracing me. By having the book, I'm no longer alone and I no longer need to feel lonely. So this was a chapter that at first made my anger. I had breakfast angry, lunch was anger, dinner was anger. I worked out so much. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo and I've had 9 knee surgeries because I was kicking and punching through anger. But within this chapter, especially this chapter, was with the grace that happened to me for me to find out that this itself, reading it and realizing it, that I'm not the only one that has gone through what I've gone through. Steve did too. And this itself helps me to find out that I'm not alone anymore. And it's incredible how many times I read this chapter. And there is some revelation in it for me. So it's very heartwarming to know that at least we have each other. We can come and talk about it and see that we're not alone. Not anymore, if we want to notice that we're not alone. Nick, what have you got to share, my darling? You are muted.
Let me get it unmuted there. As I hear his story, how far back can I go on this?
As far as you like to go.
Yeah. So
show.
He touched on his history and he touched on the experiences and how those molded him into who he was when he went into that business. And he was pretty powerful the way he was. And it made him everything that he was. And up to that point, he hadn't dealt with the anger and the frustrations of his past that made him who he was in that time. And so it gave him a reset and it took him a long time. I can relate to that. Steve put me on his shoulder, metaphorically speaking, back in 2009. And man, I'm feeling the emotions of this. My family dynamic, a lot like his, was rough. My dad died when I was 2. Nine of 11 kids. I'm number 9. Mom was mentally ill. Tough upbringing. A lot of things went the way I thought they shouldn't go, but they did. They went the way they did. And through life, I thought I was a certain person. I thought I was something. And so I went through life being that because that's who I thought I was. In 2009, my business failed. I was bankrupt, foreclosed on, getting food at a welfare center, decided to become a life coach and a speaker of all things. And somebody said, you need to speak to Steve Hardison. And I said, okay, I don't know who this man is. He calls me when I'm in the parking lot of the welfare center and talks to me. I don't know this man. He sits for an hour and talks to me, puts me on his shoulder. He inspires me into my greatness. It took me a decade to recover from that conversation, to get to the point that I could release the book called The Giants and the Smalls. But he was the inspiration for that. He was the giant in the story. He was the man that put me on his shoulder and stood up and showed me my potential. So just like Lloyd, Steve had somebody put him on their shoulder, Steve did that for me. He does that for all of us. You know, he does that through his story. Even though he said he'd never write a book, he says he won't do a lot of things that he does. That's what I've learned about Steve. He says he doesn't talk to people unless they pay him to sit with him, and he talks to me all the time. He's an incredible dude. He does whatever he does. And the one thing I know about Steve is he's very masterful at getting people to see their value and their power. And he'll stay with you long enough to get you to see it for yourself. And so that conversation, that single conversation in a parking lot in a welfare center in Salt Lake, when I felt like I was smaller than I've ever been in my life, this man put me up and showed me what I was capable of. And it took me a decade to live into it. In 2020, we released the book, we built our community, and we're still going strong, just like this community. And that happened because Steve had his own awakening moment, like I had an awakening moment. He had a hard time, just like I had a hard time. His life wasn't easy, just like my life wasn't easy. And he decided to be something different, just like I decided to be something different. And sometimes you need that person like Steve to just sit with you and hold space. Carrie to Steve is my Steve to me, right? If that makes sense.
Mhm.
She held space for him while he was struggling. He held space for me. So I think every one of us in this room can do that, where we can hold space and allow others to stand on our shoulders and show them their potential and help them to see what they're capable of. And you never know who it's going to affect. So I think you got to do it anyway. That's all I've got.
That's fantastic. Thank you. What a beautiful share. Yeah, we've all had each other, and we've all had that long. Isn't that funny that we think that we're the only one that goes through what we've been going through? And the sad thing is that we want to hold on to it. And it's incredible how much we can learn and grow from this. And I'm totally with you in this. I've never paid the dime to Steve, and how this man picks up the phone and calls me 7 a.m., 9 p.m., and I get the most love anyone has ever given to me, that gets me and got me before a couple of years ago from this misery that I felt so lonely all my life. And to get that from Steve, it encouraged me today to be that for others. And don't sit and wait to get paid, and just do it because there's a dollar sign behind it. I'm like, I always want to say, like, I want to be like Steve. And I said, it's not you want to be, just be it now. And that's the being that I'm learning from him. And every page in this book, it's like a prescription drug. Absolutely. And it's phenomenal to see that, how all of us in different ways, like you say, 2009, how you went down in business and emotion, and Dave Orton many years ago went down, and how we all went down and we all got back up by the grace of God and having Steve on our ways to help us up. And now we are it for others. That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing. That was great.
Thank you.
So now we're going to go to all of you. I can see David's electronic hand up. If anybody else has anything else to share, please use your electronic
Yes.
hand and let's come and share. So David, please go ahead. You froze, I think.
Thank you. This chapter angered. Can you hear me?
It's very
Can you-
broken.
Am I there?
You're not.
Can you hear me now? Any better?
Yeah.
Okay. I just shrunk my screen a little bit. Maybe you can hear me better now. This chapter angered me, and it angered me for a few reasons. First, I grew up with a parent who was a rageholic,
It's
and I learned how to be a rageaholic. I learned the do you not hear me?
no, it's not very clear.
Are you able to hear me?
We are now.
I don't know how to make it good. I don't know how to make it clearer than it is.
Try turning
Try,
on.
try to turn off your video.
I was
Yeah,
saying
turn
that
off your video. Could you turn
I'll
off your
turn-
video?
I'll turn off.
Yeah, now
Yes,
you can
I
talk.
can.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
perfect.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yes, we can.
Good. Then let me talk. I found this chapter. I was very, very angry as I read this chapter. I started to say that I had a parent who was a rageaholic, and I learned how to do that. And I learned the surge of hormones that go through you as you rage, and how that becomes part of one when one does that, and how it meets needs to rage like that. So I understand what it is to be that angry. And I also feel anger towards Lloyd for putting Steve in that position. First of all, I have no idea who Ron was in the first section, and he went away. No one knew what Ron, Ron's there, and then he's gone. And in the second section, and there's Carrie, who's about to give birth, he puts in harm's way as he is out of control, and he doesn't. It's a process that Lloyd himself says is dangerous, and he had to enter in Steve's space and harm himself. Really designed intervention that put people in danger, and that angers me. What also angers me is that Lloyd made it two and done and out, and he left Steve in a fetal position where Steve needed therapy or coaching or something for the next 6 months or a year as he processed what came of it. And instead, he ended up in a fetal position and having to leave the company because he couldn't function. Steve
You're getting cut off.
help. And Lloyd said, okay, two and done, and you're out. Now you're on your own. I'll negotiate you out of here where I left off. But Lloyd put Steve in a position where he did not have any more support. He needed therapy, he needed coaching, he needed something, but instead he left him in a fetal position and only negotiated his buyout. That angers. And I'll stop here, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
For me, as a rageaholic,
Well,
I don't know how much of that you got. So I don't know where I ended, but what I was saying was that it angered me that he left him in a fetal position and he just negotiated his buyout, and he should have given help, therapy or coaching or something, and he didn't. And I'm angry at that, and for as Steve. And I hope you heard that.
thank you very much. Thanks for your share. Are you complete? Because I can't hear you exactly. David?
Yes, I am complete.
Okay, go. Excellent.
If you heard me, I'm complete.
Yes, we did, mostly. Yeah. Thank you. I want to make sure that I'm not cutting you off. Thanks for sharing. Um, Andrea, didn't you have your hand up? Oh, go ahead, sweetheart.
Thank you. Thank you for the reading. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This chapter, as all of them, is very profound. And my question that I was listening through was, who would I need to be to have this be a breakthrough for me, for a wonderful me? And I heard the break-in belonging part, the breaking belonging part. And I remembered, of course, childhood, feeling like I didn't belong. And so that was the point when I started, when I stopped feeling like I belonged, and I cut myself off from myself. And I stopped. The connection was, there was a disconnect. So it started like back in school. So I'm seeing that that I stuffed all the feelings inside, and I gave myself an ulcer when I was 8 years old because I couldn't deal with it. And so my thoughts were creating that break in me. And so now when I read the book about me, I realize I don't have to create those thoughts anymore, and they're not true. I can question all those thoughts that I created before. So it's just I don't have to live those thoughts, and I don't have to create them. So it's pretty, I'm not as triggered anymore by all that stuff that happened like 50 years ago. That, why hang on to that crappy story and version of me? I'm not that person anymore. And it's not true. So thank you for this opportunity to share. And oh, by the way, last thing, tonight is Diwali. I understand the celebration of good over evil. And actually, Martin and I were in Bali the night of the bombing. There was a bombing. It was Diwali there in Bali, and the people said, why did you come? Why would you come after this happened? And we were just like, we just had to be here. And it was we were like the only tourists there, it felt like. And the people were so lovely, and we got shown around the island by a leader of a village. He was our driver, and he made $1 a day to feed his family of I don't know how many. And so we learned so much from them. And so I just am very grateful. As I'm so grateful for this book and all the breakthroughs that we have the opportunity every time we read it, and it just gets stronger in community. So thank you. Thank you,
Andrea. Well done. The fact that you can just let go of your past and say, I'm not there anymore, that's a massive achievement. So well done, sweetheart. Excellent. Good for you. Wolfgang, yes, bring it on.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Good evening.
David, I hear you. And it's a terrible thing to leave somebody in a fetal position, knowing you have to leave the person in this position to heal. You would love to give everything to make it heal right away. I was reading this chapter 16 possibly 10 times more than the book, because I was thinking of what is room 509? And what I noticed in this chapter, there is hardly anything written about the time when this breathwork happened until Steve left the company. It's literally, I think, 2 lines or 3 lines. We don't know how often Lloyd reached possibly out to Steve. It's just not written there. We don't know which support Steve asked for or had to stay alone. We simply don't know. It's nothing written there. There is something written before. Actually, this chapter is pretty short because you possibly could write a book about that. And the only thing I see is after that uncomfortable place, the next chapter is the birth of coaching. So literally this, what we judge, what we see, what we don't know, at the end leads to the most beautiful result. I mean, Steve before the breathing was not in a good place. I would say he wasn't being able to be loving because he was so angry. And afterwards, he could become the most loving person, reaching out to you any day and night time, giving love from who he is today. And he created afterwards, or it created afterwards, the most loving relationship to his wife, Amy, he couldn't have before the rage, because the rage was standing in between and everything else he loved. So this chapter is a very easy judged and very rare actually described. It's very little written about it. And that's what we tend, when we don't know, we make our own opinion about. And rage makes us blind. We say that. Rage makes blind. So we don't see what really happens. And I thank you, Dave, for speaking today, because I was in that place. I reached out to Dave. I did want to talk to Dave. I knew something's going on. And I also know there will be something exceptional, beautiful afterwards. For anybody being in this space, your birth of coaching, whatever that is, will happen afterwards. And what I see is, it takes obviously time to be alone, because I went through that a couple of years ago. It's about to be alone, to sit alone and to find out what is it. So there is a time of loneliness, which we try to entertain in our life. Today is a lot of entertainment, not to have this space, and it's a very uncomfortable place. But I used to say one thing: we look at the big shadow, we are very afraid, and when we turn around, we see the dwarf jumping in front of the candle. And then it becomes actually ridiculous what we were afraid of. But this is usually things out of our childhood we accumulated. And it's worth to go through that. I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wolf. Terry. Yes, ma'am. Let's hear you.
Yes. I've not had an experience like this. And as I was thinking about that we must talk about ourselves, I thought about what it must be like to do that. My husband didn't have an experience like that, but he had another experience that his mom died when he was 2 years old. And he started to stutter because his dad, who had to go to work, put him with different families, and he never knew where he was. And so he started to stutter and stuttered until he was in his 30s. So I thought about, I don't know what that's like either. And then Monday night, I went to dinner with friends. And it was a very special celebration because their daughter and her husband had just arrived from Israel. He was Israeli. She'd been in a kibbutz for several years. And to hear their story of being in what do you call it, bomb shelters, listening to the sirens going off and not knowing what's going on. The feeling of what does it do to me is to listen to these stories and feel just a tiny bit of what these other people are going through. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you for your share. Yeah, we have to pray for the whole world to be a better place for everyone. Martha, sweetheart, did you have your hand up? Oh, yes, you have. Yes.
Oh, I remember when I first read this chapter, when I first got the book, and my heart stopped for a few minutes. And it stopped again as I'm reading this chapter, as I heard Nicholas read the chapter. And it reminded me of the moment that I went through my demolition. And it was an experience I never thought I would have, but it happened where I didn't even realize how much anger I was carrying inside of me and how much, I will say the word, how much hatred I was carrying inside of me. And I had the opportunity to take a bat and beat a pillow to the extent that at the end of beating that pillow, my arms ached from holding that bat so hard and from the pounding that I had given that pillow. And I was left exhausted. So I really relate to Steve's experience of, I call it the numbness that happened after me, of the amount of energy that was released and the amount of integration that had to be integrated, how long it took me to really come back to myself. And when I did, what I experienced was what I will call the resurrection. That through that moment of finally letting go of years and years and years of holding back, of not using my voice, of wanting to please, of being the good girl, of so many things, that at the release of all of that energy was like, oh my goodness, I can breathe again. And from that point on became such a path for me to heal at the deepest levels possible, to that extent that now when thoughts come back of the past, they come and they go, and I hold no energy with them. In fact, it's a loving space that now I hold because of all that allowed me to be where I am today. Mm-hmm. So I just, in listening to that part for Steve, I could just so related. I so related to him and related to me, and how much medicine that was for me. So thank you for letting me share.
Oh, you're welcome, sweetheart. What a beautiful share. You were so right on, I shouldn't say that you're so right. Who am I to say? But when I look at, when I read the book and I see that he says of what he went through in this particular chapter, it 100% confirms all the agony that I went through in life, all the anger that I've carried for all these years. and find the gift and the diamond in it, and find my joy out of that today. At least number one, I'm not carrying the anger to this day. Number two, I learned so much better from it. I am a different person from it. I don't know if I would be who I am today if I didn't go through that amount of animosity, anger, frustration, terrible upbringing, a busy home, being rejected by the world, all of that. If I didn't go through all of that, would I be who I am today? 99.5% not. And that pain and agony made me. And if I have to change anything, I wouldn't change one bit of it. That demolition in my life has gotten me to fly today. It's been like the pedal store for me to get on and be where I am and who I am today, just like Steve. Look at him. Look at Steve. Check him out with all that he's gone through. And I am grateful for all of that. Yes, Maria, sweetheart. Let's hear you. You're muted.
Okay, I think I got it this time.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to, this chapter was probably one of the more meaningful ones for me, because when I first read this book, I was at the bottom of my destruction, of my demolition. I had come through a tough life and a really tough marriage. And by the end of that marriage, I was broken. And my problem wasn't anger, although that came with it. My issue was depression. And my answer to that depression, because of where I had led my life, was to lay in bed for a couple years and trying to decide if I want to live or do I want to die. And looking back now to that woman, I'm so grateful to her that she stuck it out, because without her sticking through that, without me having that experience, I couldn't be the woman I am today. So I feel the same way as you, Fadi. I count every trouble as gain, because without that, I wouldn't be the woman I am right now. And I have, in about a year and a half, because of this book, this community, my beautiful life coach, I have completely turned my world around. I am unrecognizable from the woman who laid in bed for 2 years. And that's because Steve wasn't stingy. Amy wasn't stingy. They shared. They shared their talents. They shared their love. And because they did that, I found my own healing through their words and through this book. Now, it's going to be a really long time, I hope, that I study this till I die. I never want to stop this process of mindfulness, presentness, being present, and a life of gratefulness. I'm just so grateful for everything I went through. I'm grateful for this community, and it has literally changed me for the good.
Amen.
And I love you all, and I am complete.
That's wonderful. I always say behind every time, every night, it gets pitch dark. And right after that pitch dark is the dawn. And this, unless it's dark, the dawn wouldn't show. And the demolition is necessity for our growth. Absolutely. Yes, Nan, please, let's hear your ideas.
Hi, I'm really
Hello.
thankful to be here tonight. It's been a while since I haven't been on this round of the book readings yet.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, so happy to be here. I haven't had one demolition. So when I look back on my childhood, I had a really good childhood. I was the oldest of 8 children. And I would say the parts for me is that I learned at a very young age to be a pleaser. So it's those type of things. It's the types of things that I would look at my family and look at how to navigate it and how to best do it, where it was as what you say, conflict free or something like that. And then that's how I would glide through life. But I also married a very strong man, and my late husband Rick, and then I was a pleaser, and so then that fit for a while until I started realizing that it wasn't in my best interest if I denied myself things. It's fine to accommodate and collaborate and that kind of thing and cooperate with people, but it's those kinds of realizations that I've had dotting my life, that for me to go in and look and have the courage to go in and see clarity. And that's a lot of what my prayer is thank you for the clarity in this situation, that I can see things as they really are. And so then those are the pathway demolitions, if you will, if that's the word we're saying, or the realizations, the going in, the feeling the feelings instead of just acknowledging it, knowing it in my head intellectually, but being willing to go in and feel the feelings. And through these experiences, I truly do have miracles often, because I consider these discoveries, these aha moments, these dark nights of the soul that are followed by the dawn that we're talking about, are the miracles of life. And it takes so much courage to be able to look in and find it within myself, saying who I am, who am I being that? And then you complete the sentence. And it's my prayer to be present and in love and holding the space and being the mother of my children and the grandmother of my grandchildren. Who am I being with them as I, and then now I feel emotion as I witness as they're the chicken and the egg, or they're the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. And for me to have the courage to allow them to come through the cocoon themselves and have me not cut them out, but have them be able to develop their own wings and their own strength. And I get to hold the space for them and love them as they do this, and witness it and celebrate it and get on the mattress with them and hold the space. And that is my prayer. And I'm just really thankful for that, and that the universe and God so completely supports me in this. And it truly is a miracle to live. And I'm complete. Thank you.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you here. Well, you're very much loved here. So please do come back. We love to hear from you. That's wonderful to have you here. Our very own Tom. Yes.
Thank you, Nan, for what you just said, because I was kind of going down a little bit of a dark path, but you said miracles. And yeah, my life is miraculous, and I experience miracles. I'm looking at miracles right now, and I experience them all the time. Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but then as this progressed, it's like, okay, yeah, all right, that's coming up. That's coming up. But, my life has been like a self-demolition. I did horrendous things, as during my say 20s. I mean, horrendous is probably too strong of a word. But, and I have never said this, publicly. I've told a lot of people this, but I got married when I was 30, and 2 weeks after that, I cheated on my wife. So that was a demolition that stuck with me for years and years and years. And we worked it out, worked it through, and we did complete our marriage, or I actually divorced my wife, and it really was the most courageous thing I did, because if I hadn't have done that, that was a big demolition for me. And it was the day in court, I couldn't talk for 1 hour. I sat on a bench and I couldn't get words to come out of my mouth, and but had I not done that, I would have been living, this fake life, this double life. And her and I are friends. She's got a little cold. I check in on her. I see her every now and then. We don't even, I don't know what she calls it. I don't call it a divorce. I call it a completion, a marriage completion. But, I did the Landmark Forum in 2005. I did the whole curriculum in like 6, 7, and then I coached in a self-expression leadership program for a long time. But I do remember coming out of the forum feeling like I was punched in the face. That was a really hard thing, because we do this part called the genesis of identity, and that's what was described in the book by what Lloyd did. Sounds like he did it a lot harsher than the one I went through, but it was just done in the forum, and we didn't do it outside the forum itself. But when I look back, if it wasn't for Landmark, I would not be here right now. I mean, Landmark started this path, and then just so many amazing things. One of them being reading this book and meeting all of you. So I'm going to go back to what Nan was saying. These things happened, and it doesn't define who I am. My document defines who I am. I created my document. I live my document, and that's who I am. It has nothing to do with the past demolition. But I had to go through that too. So Nan, you talked about miracles, and and that's what I'm present to right now, is miracles and love. And I love all of you, and I'm complete.
Thank you so much. Great share, sweetheart. Thank you. Oh, well, I don't see any other shares, but Jeremy, anything else comes up for you want to share? You're good. How about you, Nicholas? No, you're good? Perfect. All right.
I feel complete. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reading such an amazing chapter, and with your beautiful share. It resonates with, I'm sure, all of us. Yes, I've hardly seen one that it says my growing up and my marriage and my career and everything has been fantastic all my life. Every day has been blossoming. So we've all had demolition in ways, one way or another. So thank you for reading that. With all that we've done, with the great learning that we've had in here and the shares that we have, now it's time to, if there is no other shares, I'd love to pass it on to the beautiful Elizabeth to bring us to closing. Elizabeth, take over.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what an amazing chapter this has been. And I just want to say thank you so much, Nicholas, for joining us this evening. It was great having you here. Also want to say thank you so much to our moderators tonight. You guys have done an amazing job, and I just appreciate everything that you guys have done, this sharing in this space. Team Tuck, thank you again for another amazing book reading, and everything that just keeps coming together, and how we just keep taking it a little bit deeper each and every week. And each book reading, just there's so much more gold in every reading that we have. I want to also invite you with that to join us this coming Sunday. It's going to be the 12th of November, 7 a.m. Pacific or 10 a.m. Eastern time here in the States. We're going to be doing chapter 17, The Birth of Coaching, and our reader is going to be Farah Ismail, one of our awesome Tuck members. So many other amazing opportunities within this group and this space for you to take your being just a little bit deeper. We have our upcoming event, the 2-year anniversary for the Ultimate Experience. It's going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona, January 26th and 27th. So if you have not gotten your tickets yet, you're interested in that, please type yes in the chat and we will get that information to you. Such an amazing opportunity for us to take it just a little bit deeper with that. But not only that, we have the 2B24 Ultimate Birmingham Experience that's going to be in the UK. That'll be May 25th and 26th of 2024. So if you want information on that, please, again, drop yes in the chat, Birmingham, and we'll get you some more information on that. If you want to learn more about that, we also have some Facebook groups that we can put you into. You can learn more about the events and other awesome resources that we have for you for your being journey. The Ultimate Coach YouTube channel, lots of gold there. The Ultimate Coach podcast, Ultimate Coach Instagram, Ultimate Coach LinkedIn group, and we also have the Ultimate Coach Weekly Being Digest newsletter that has upcoming events that are sent out via email. So many opportunities for you to get connected, to feed your souls, connect with people within the group, just take it a little bit deeper. Other extras, the ultimatecoachextras.com. So if you'd like more information on any of the resources that we've mentioned, just type yes into the chat and what you're interested in, and we can share some more info with you. So now it's time for us to head on over to the after party or the afterglow, call it what you want. And there is another space for you to share. We go off camera. There's no recording. We're not live anymore at that point, but we still share vulnerably whatever's coming up for you. Please join us. Otherwise, we will invite you all to unmute. We're going to wish everybody a good morning, good night, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you until we see each other again. So go ahead, unmute, and feel free to say
Buenas
adios.
noches.
Thank you,
Buenas
everybody.
noches. Buenas
Have a
tardes.
good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Delightful to
What a
be with you.
fantastic
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye, Cassie.
Mhm.
So awesome.